Howdy everybody, David Minkin here, starting player with Connect More, and welcome to a Kickstarter preview edition of Avoid the Rules, a video of instruction and demonstration that helps ease rule understanding and learning. Easy start. And what game am I featuring today? Well, it's Pocket Imperium by David Mortimer. Now, David Mortimer is also the same guy that designed Dragon Slayer dice game, I believe was released last year, 2014. And what I'm going to show you today is a print and play version of the game. So when you're looking at the components that I'm about to show you, please do not take this as what the final game will look like, the size or anything else like that. I simply printed these off from some images that the publisher sent me so I could make this video and also have an opportunity to play this game with my game group as well to see how the game might play so I could share my thoughts with you. You'll also notice that my little spaceships here that I'm going to use throughout the game are actually the pylons from Can't Stop, but they look pretty cool when you shot from above. They actually look like spaceships flying around. So please keep that in mind. If you want to see what the final game is going to look like, I encourage you to head over to the Kickstarter page and check out the game for yourself. So again, my goal always when I do a Kickstarter preview video is not whether or not to tell you if I love this component or that component. I will tell you that, but the whole key and the focus for me is to give you enough decision points about this game and show you how the game is going to be played such that you may make an informed decision of whether or not this game is going to be right for you and your game group or not. Now, the one thing I do want to say is I found that I enjoyed this game at much different levels depending on the number of players. I'm going to talk about that in my final thoughts. I also believe that Rado is going to be doing a run-through of this, and he typically likes to do two-player run-throughs. So if you're looking for the two-player experience, I highly encourage you to go over there. He always produces high-quality videos, and you get more of a feeling of the two-player experience. I'm going to be focusing on a four-player example for the rest of this video if you like to keep watching. But please stay tuned for my final thoughts where I can go over some of my feelings about the different player counts and how it actually impacts the game, as well as other decision points for you. I'm pleased to present to you Pocket Imperium. Now this is what the game looks like, almost set up for a four-player game. Now before I finish the setup, I need to talk about a few things. The very first thing that I need to stress, and I'll stress it several times throughout this video, is that this is a print and play copy of the game. The publisher sent me some image files and I printed out the game itself. I rescaled things for my liking. I'm not sure if this is going to be the size or if they might change or tweak a few things for the final copy. So please keep that in mind. Everything you see here has either been printed from files or has been hodgepodged together, because you also notice that for the setup each player is going to get 3 cards, no problem, but each player is also going to get 12 spaceships, and that's going to be represented by different spaceships in the actual final game. Well, for me, I don't have access to that, so I just used the Can't Stop pylons because, hey, they look like spaceships flying around when you view them from top when they're on their side there, so that's pretty cool. And the other thing I need to stress, if you're actually counting these pylons, you'll notice that each player actually has in this video 11 spaceships, but in fact in the game you have 12 spaceships. So when I played this game I was creative when I needed that 12th spaceship, but for the purposes of this video that will be fine. So with all of those disclaimers pushed out of the way, let's take a look and talk about the game itself. So when I see a game laid out like this in front of me, the very first question I have is, well, how do I win? Well, like many other board games, the winner is going to be the person with the most points. And points are tracked in this game using these little point tokens over here. So you'll see over here they come in different denominations. This is worth 10 points right here, and if you flip it over it's going to be like this. Because when you receive your points, when you take them back into your player area, you are going to flip these tokens over, kind of like Small World when you get these different victory point tokens, and you'll keep them like this. So people might be tracking your progress throughout the game, but they might not exactly know how you're doing. So there's 10 point tokens, there's 5-point tokens and single-point tokens, and they come like this. You can flip them over, and the way you're going to get points is at the end of each round there's going to be a point scoring phase, and the way that works is going in player turn order. So suppose as the blue is the first player, that player will choose a sector tile, and a sector tile is one of these tiles here, and it's represented by 7 different hexagons, these 6 within the center one here. You will choose one sector tile to score, and I'll explain what that means in a second. And so going in player turn order, each player will choose a tile to score, whether or not it's only their spaceships or there's a mixture of spaceships on those planets. And then finally, If there's a player that controls this center tri-prime, it's called, that player gets to choose a second but unscored tile for that round to score. So in this particular case, for 4 players, there's a possibility of having 5 of these different sector tiles scored. And the way that they're going to be scored is that if you look at each of these different planetary systems that exist, they either have 1 dot on their hex or 2 dots on that hex. That represents how many victory points control of these systems will represent at the end of the round. You will also notice that here in tri-prime, as it's called, this center universe, is you see that there's actually 3 dots. Those 3 dots are not scored at the end of the round. However, at the very end of the game, there'll be an additional end of game scoring where every single planet that is under the control of one player will be scored according to the number of dots that's on that hex, including the center planetary system, and that's when these 3 victory points would actually be scored at the very end of the game. So let's dive in and let's talk about how it is you're going to start getting control of some of these different planetary systems, because you need to have control of these different systems to be able to score the points at the end of the round. So first, why don't we finish the setup? So what's going to happen here now is at the very beginning of the game, each player is going to have the opportunity to put some spaceships out onto the board and establish a position for themselves to get the game started. And if you're familiar with Settlers of Catan, which I'm sure you are if you're watching this video, if you're taking the time to watch a board game review video, it works exactly the same way. So let's suppose that Blue again is the starting player. So you get to take 2 of your spaceships here, and I just piece them together like this, and you get to place them on any single planetary system. So any one of these planets that has a single dot on them, you get to put 2 spaceships on. So Blue, he likes this position here, he's going to go there. And Pink will get to put 2 spaceships on any single planetary system. So Pink might go, well, I'm going to go over here. Then Green might go, and Green might want to get involved over there. So Green goes like that. And then finally Yellow, the last player, he gets to put 2 spaceships out, and he might go like this. Now, in reverse player order, we do that again. So then the final player gets to put an additional set of 2. So this gives Yellow the opportunity, or the final player the opportunity, to maybe position themselves and be able to get a double down on 2 different planetary systems that might work out well for them. So Yellow's going to go over here. He's got some plans. So then Green says, well, I'm going to go here, and I'm not really putting too much thought into this, so Pink might want to go over here. And then finally Blue, the starting player, will go find another system that he might go. So finally, we have all of the spaceships here on the board. We have some spaceships in reserve that we might want to add, and we're ready to play the game. So how do we play the game? Well, the gameplay is very simple. You take the 3 cards that were dealt to you, you take a look, and then you organize them face down in front of you in an order in which you want them played. And so you're pre-programming your entire round using these 3 cards. So now would be a great time to talk about these cards. So as I mentioned in the intro to this video, this is a 4X micro game. So we have an expand card, an explore card, and an exterminate card. And you see that they're even numbered in the order in which they're going to be taken every turn. So this is 1, 2, and 3, but you'll notice, like, well, what about exploit? But exploit is a condition that will be checked for after all 3 of these cards have been played. So let me explain how these cards work. Now, before we talk about the power of each one of these cards and what it allows you to do, we need to talk about how efficient each of these cards is going to be when you play it. Now, the way that this is going to work is each of the 4 players at the beginning of the round is going to choose an order in which they want these cards played. So perhaps on the left would be the first card I'd want to play, then in the middle the second card, and finally the third card. And then I would place them down in front of me like so. And once everybody has done that, then we'd all simultaneously reveal our top card. So in this particular case, I revealed Explore. So here I revealed my top card, not knowing what my neighbors are going to play. So what's really neat about this is you'll notice that in the center of all of these cards, there's either 1 dot, 2 dot, or 3 dot. This tells you how efficient this card is going to be depending on how many people played this exact same card. In a 4-player game, you're only interested in what your neighbors are doing to you, immediately to your left and immediately to your right. You do not care about the guy across the table from you. You're only focused on these. So for those of you who have played Lewis Clark, for example, and where you get resources, adjacent resources with your neighbors, it works exactly the same way. Now, the really cool thing about this is if you are the only only person of your neighbors to choose this card, you get 3 actions. And this is true for the other 2 cards as well. You'll see that the Exterminate here, you get 3 actions, and the Expand, you get 3 actions. However, if 2 people, including yourself, have played this card, then only 2 actions are taken of this. And finally, if everybody played this card, both your neighbors and yourself played this card, then you only get to take this action once. And that is true for both of your neighbors as well. So it's really quite interesting because you're really trying to figure out what is my neighbor trying to do, because obviously if you can be more efficient in all of your actions throughout the round, chances are you'll be able to explore, expand, and exterminate better than anybody else. So that's how that works, and it's a pretty neat mechanism because it helps you engage with your neighbors and try to figure out what it is that they're up to. So let me quickly reiterate again what these numbers at the top of the cards mean. These numbers represent the order in which these cards will be resolved once every player has flipped over the card. So for example, if several players have flipped over the Expand card, this is the card with the number 1. This is the first action that will always occur within a round. So all of the players who have played the Expand card, they get to go first, and that will be resolved in player turn order. Then after them, any player who's played an Explore card, they get to go second and take their action second. Should there be multiple players who have played the Explore card, well then that will be resolved again in player turn order. And finally, as you could probably tell by now, the Exterminate is going to be the third and final action that's resolved at any one card flip, and this again is resolved in player turn order should there be multiple players who have played this card. So I hope that makes sense. So now let's look at each of the actions that the card allows you to take. So first of all, we have the Expand action. And when you take the Expand action, what that allows you to do, it allows you to take 1, 2, or 3 spaceships from your supply, again, depending on how efficient your play of the card actually was and what your neighbors have decided to do. So for the purposes of this example, let's just suppose I get to add 2 different spaceships. One of my neighbors actually added an Expand card as well, or played an Expand card as well. So I take 2 spaceships, and I get to add these 2 spaceships to any occupied system that I'm currently on. So for example, for blue, I could put a spaceship here, I could put a spaceship there, and that's my turn. I basically added more to my fleet out onto the board. It's important to note that you cannot add a spaceship to a hex that is not controlled by you or into empty space. You always have to add it to a planetary system that is already controlled by you. So that's quite simple. Expand. Next, let's talk about Explore. Now, Explore is the ability for you to explore the planetary systems, for you to fly around space. And again, we'll assume that one of our neighbors have actually played an Explore action or an action card, and that we get to take 2 different Explore actions. And the icons here at the bottom of the card are really quite helpful because it explains very clearly what you're supposed to do. You can take 1 fleet and move it up to 2 spaces away. So let me show you what that looks like on the board. So for example, suppose blue has the Explore action again. Now what he would be able to do is he can take any fleet, and a fleet can be any number of spaceships, and he can fly them up to 2 spaces away. So he can do any number of things. He could fly over here, and that would be 2 spaces away. But it's even more interesting than that, because what you can also do is you can drop spaceships off. So say for example these 2 start together, it comes to here, he can drop off a spaceship behind him and continue moving that way. That still counts as only 1 Explore action. Similarly, if you like, you can also go and land on one of these uncontrolled planets and take control of that planet. So he could take this guy here, for example, and fly him 2 spaces away, no problem. And now he has control of that planet. So Explore lets you fly around. The other thing you can also do, suppose this pylon was already there, that spaceship was already there, and this was the fleet that you want to move, well, he could simply move over here, pick that guy up, and continue on his way. Again, that's 1 Explore option. The other thing you can do is you could actually fly right into this Tri-Prime area. And Tri-Prime stops all movement. You cannot move through Tri-Prime like you can in 2 successive Explorer actions. But say for example I want to move this fleet say over to here, and I do have 2 Explore actions, I cannot go 1, 2. My Explore action stops once I get into Tri-Prime, provided that nobody else is here. You cannot explore into any hexes that are already controlled by another player. So say for example the green player had his ship right here. Blue is out of luck. Even though green here, he decided to go and he's blocking this intergalactic space. He is not allowing blue to come through this way. So blue would have to go either go around through these planets, or he could have to go through Tri-Prime and around, or he just decides to focus his attention on a different player. And this is a key strategy and a key element of this game, which makes it interesting with more players. Because with more players, you're able to take these chokeholds, or these little basically pinching areas where here there's only one spot of intergalactic space. Green can basically take that and block it off from blue and force blue to change his strategy or go somewhere else. In addition, suppose green on a future turn had basically took over one of these other planets, well then blue has to either start fighting against green or go some other direction. And that's a cool thing that this game allows you to do, especially with more players. There are different choke points throughout this galaxies, all these different galaxies, and all these tiles again are set up randomly, and by being a little bit creative about how you kind of control, a little bit of an area control bit of where you're going to place your stations to not necessarily protect yourself, but more or less focus someone else's energy on somebody different than you. So I guess that essentially is protecting yourself, but it's not being a confrontational battle, and it will get to that. We'll talk about exterminate here in a second, but it's a way and basically focus people's attention, and that also elevates the game a little bit off the table, so there's a little bit of trash talking that goes on. So you're like, hey, look at Pink over there. I saw he was looking at you funny even when he arrived, even before he started playing the game. You should go get him. And then by just having this blocked off, then blue might say, yeah, okay, that's a better choice to go anyhow. Meanwhile, Pink is going, curses, oh, I can't believe you got me, I can't believe you're coming this way, go back towards green, he's a weaker target. And so that's where this game comes up off the table, when you start actually taking care and playing different strategic spots that may focus someone's attention elsewhere. And finally, we have what's referred as the exterminate action. Now, the exterminate action is essentially where you can start taking over different planetary systems, and this is the way that you're going to interact and have combat with other players. Now again, let's take the example where we're going to actually have two different exterminate actions. We'll assume that one of our neighbors drew this card as well. So the way that the exterminate action goes, again, let's go back to blue, is you can attack another planetary system, and that counts as one action. And the neat thing about that is you need to count the planetary system that you're attacking as an action, and not the number of ships that you're using. You only want to count, and the reason why I say that is, for example, suppose blue was here as well, so we have blue set up here and blue set up there. Blue, for one exterminate action, may come in and basically exterminate Tri-Prime, or this center planetary system that we have here. There's nobody on there, so it's unopposed. So there's two ways blue could have come here. He could have explored onto here, as I previously explained, or he could also use the exterminate to actually take over empty planetary systems as well. So what he could do is he could fly one guy from this fleet and one guy from this fleet. And even though they came from separate fleets, they are attacking, or they're exterminating the same focused area, the same planetary system, so that counts as one attack or one exterminate action. It does not count as two. You don't worry about how many ships are involved or where they're coming from. You only care about what's being attacked. So that could be one exterminate action. And then the second exterminate action he could do, he looks at green, he's like, I don't like how you've blocked me off over here. I need to get around you. Well, unfortunately, this green here, he's not going anywhere, and you cannot exterminate onto intergalactic space here. So he focuses over here on this planet, and he decides to move in and take a secondary second exterminate action here. And in doing so, it's just a process of elimination. Green loses one, blue loses one, and blue is left in control of that planetary system. Now, blue did not have to go in with two ships. He could have, if he wanted to, just go in with his one ship, for example. Just take one ship and then just eliminate the two. He's not obliged to go in and actually take over full control, but he can, depending on whatever his strategy is that he wants. So it's that simple. That's explore, expand, and exterminate, and all three of those things are controlled by your cards. And again, the efficiency of how you're going to be able to accomplish each of these actions is controlled by what your neighbors are doing. So again, that's that element that comes up off the table, and that kind of deductive sleuthing little bit, trying to figure out what it is that they're doing and what that they're up to and what order they might be going into. So I personally like these types of games that have these programmed turns into them. One that I enjoy playing with my kids is River Dragon. Same thing, you take 5 different cards, I believe, or yeah, 5 different cards, and you set them up and you flip them all over and you got to play them in order. And sometimes things get a little bit chaotic because what you thought was going to happen and what were you planning on happening, everybody else decided to do the same thing. Then you don't have the efficiencies that you want, and so you're adding less spaceships, or you're not moving as far as you want, and then you got to adapt and you got to start coming up with different strategies on the fly as to how you might be able to refocus and be able to get the most points and score the most points at the end of the round. After all of the cards have been played, but before you score the points, there's what's referred to as the exploit phase. Now it's really quite simple. Wherever your spaceship is, you can think of he's exploiting that planetary system. He needs some resources. He needs to be able to survive. And the way that it works is any empty hex can support one spaceship. Any single planetary system that has a value of 1 can support 2 spaceships. Any of these 2 value planetary systems can support 3 spaceships. And again, Tri-Prime here, he gets to support 4 spaceships. So essentially, you take the number of dots that you see and you add 1, and that's what you're able to support during the exploit phase. If you are unable to support a spaceship, that spaceship is removed down to such a point until that hex can support that number of spaceships. So here we do a quick little look and we see, no, all of those spaceships are fine, but let's just have a little bit of fun here. Let's suppose Pink had 3 right here. Well, this being a level 1 planetary system, it can only support 2 spaceships, so he would simply remove a spaceship and put it back into his playing area. Now, to show you what end of round and end of game scoring looks like, I figured it'd be easier just to show you what the game board might look like at the end of the round, and in this case at the end of the game, and this way I can show you exactly how the scoring is done. So again, keeping with our example as Blue being the starting player, during the scoring phase at the end of the round, after the exploit is done, the Blue will take a look and he gets to decide which one of these sector tiles that he would like to score. So it's actually pretty simple. It's usually just a process of elimination to try to figure out, well, where you're going to get the most points. But the cool thing about the scoring, and again, if you'll recall that all the scoring occurs when you'll actually receive one of these tokens here and you keep it face down in your playing area, there may be chances and opportunities when you score that you may not actually take the best scoring tile for you because it may be able to take a scoring opportunity from somebody else, and sometimes that opportunity presents itself. So, but anyhow, Blue will take a look and you see on this particular scoring tile or this sector tile, he has control of only one level 1 planetary system, so that would only give him 1 point. Similarly, this tile would only give him 1 point, but the advantage of scoring this tile is nobody else is on this tile yet, because if he were to score this tile, Green would also score the planetary systems that he controls as well. So even though Blue would get 1 point here, Green would get 3 because he has 2 plus 1 is 3. And so Blue is thinking, well, maybe that's not very advantageous for me to actually score this because Green might want to score that on their turn and I might be able to piggyback and get those points anyhow. So there is a little bit of strategy here when you're playing the game, and I find that this scoring phase is more interesting again with more players because there's more tiles that are actually shared, and sometimes you're not exactly sure who is going to score what tile, but sometimes you think you can actually piggyback on them and get some points anyhow, but they may not want you to do that depending on how well they think that you might be doing. So it's a pretty neat phase. I quite like this with 4 players. With 2 players, I find it lacks a little bit of the tension, but anyhow, I digress. So let's go back and we see that Blue is over here, and Blue takes a look over here and he says, I'm going to score 3 points at this tile and Green would get 1 point. So the net differential between me and Green is 2 in my favor, whereas over here the net differential is 2 in Green's favor. So Blue says, all right, I'm going to score this sector tile. So in doing so, he will get 3 points. So he simply take from the tokens here 1, 2, 3, and then he'll put them face down in his playing area with his other scoring tokens that he has accumulated throughout the game. So now we move in player turn order to Pink. And again, Pink has the same decisions to make, and you'll see here that Pink actually has control of the center tile, the Tri-Prime. For right now, for the first initial round of scoring where everybody gets to choose a tile, we don't care about the center tile. We will at the end, but currently right now we do not care about that. So Purple takes a look and he's involved in 2 different tiles here. One where he can score 1 point, but just him, or the other tile he can score up to 3 points, but yellow will piggyback along for a single point as well. Pink likes this option better, so again, pink will score that tile and take 3 victory points. So he takes these coupons like so, these tokens, and then he puts them face down in his playing area. Now we move over to green. Now green is scattered all around, and again, I've already gone over the example where green is. Green decides to score this tile here. He cannot score this tile even if he wanted to for whatever reason, because blue has already scored this tile. You cannot score the same tile twice. So green is obliged to score this tile here. Well, he's not obliged to. He could score any unscored tile, but that wouldn't make sense. He wouldn't get any victory points for doing that. So again, green will get 3 victory points, and like the players before him, he will take 3 of these single victory point tokens and he'll put them face down in his playing area. And finally, we get over to yellow, and yellow, obviously you'd probably choose this one to score. He's going to get 2 victory points, but there's going to be no freeloaders, no people piggybacking on all of his work, so yellow will get 2 victory points for that. And meanwhile, yellow is going, ah, man, I wish I was able to expand at the right time to be able to get out and actually get this second planetary system, which would give me 2 additional points, but his final action was actually in fact expand, and he didn't have the ability to get that. So that was just a little bit of poor planning on yellow's part, but oh well. So once everybody has chosen one sector tile to score, then you check the center tile, the tri-prime tile, and you see if anybody has control of it. In this particular example, pink has control of the tri-prime tile. So pink gets to choose one additional tile that gets to be scored that has not already been scored. So pink takes a quick look and he sees that the only tile that has not yet been scored that is to his benefit would be this tile right here, where pink gets an additional 1 victory point. So he will take that victory point token like so and put it in his playing area. And that is what the end of round scoring looks like. But let's suppose this is the end of the game. So we finally just finished the last round of the game, and now we're getting into the final end game scoring. And this takes people a little bit by surprise in their first game, because it's actually quite dramatic, and there are a lot of points to be gained in the final end of game scoring that you need to be aware of as you're playing, because it's quite simple. All you do is you score every single sector tile, and every single planetary system that you control, you will get points for. So for example, if we were to go in player turn order, again with blue, blue would get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 additional victory points, and he would take, again, here's a 5 victory point counter, and he would take them and put them in his area. Then similarly, pink would get 1, 2, 3, 4, but now is the time, and this is the only time throughout the course of the game, that you actually score the tri-prime tile, so he'd get an additional 3 victory points for that, for a total of 7. So you can see how that goes around. Green would score in the same fashion as would yellow would score, and then all the scoring is done. Everybody would take their little victory point coupons or tickets or tokens that they've been collecting throughout the course of the game, and whoever has the highest total wins. And so there you have it. That's how you score Pocket Imperium. Well, welcome back. Thanks for watching the video and staying tuned. Now join me and we'll talk about the game a little bit and what I think of the game. Now at the very beginning, in the intro to this video, I talked a little bit about player count and how, in my opinion, that impacted my experience with the game. Now I've tried this game with all player counts, 2, 3, and 4 players, and honestly for me, the game gets better with more players. I will not play this game again as a 2-player game, and the reason why is I felt that the game with only 2 players lacked tension. Now, there are some rule changes that occur when you actually play with 2 players. For those rule changes, again, I encourage you to go check out Rado's video, because I'm sure he's going to show it in great detail. Now, the thing for me is I found that the board seemed big, and I guess that makes sense when you're talking about this, Imperium. There's all these different galaxies and you're flying around. I guess it's meant to feel big. But for 2 players, I found that it felt too big. I found that if you wanted to create any conflict or tension, you kind of had to go out of your way to try to do it, and then it felt forced, and I didn't really feel at any one time that I had any real tension throughout the game. And for me, the game really fell flat as a 2-player game. I also differ from Rado, because him and his wife, when they play their games, from what I understand, they don't like conflict. They like to kind of play nicer style of games. And obviously, if you're playing a game that has an exterminate card on it, well, that doesn't really imply that it's going to be a very nice style of a game, now does it? Whereas when I play games, especially with me and my wife, we like to play games where there's a high level of interaction. Whether or not that interaction comes through conflict or not, that doesn't matter. As long as it's an interaction that causes tension, causes some tough decisions to be made, as long as it feels like you have something vested in the game. Whereas in a two-player experience for us, we didn't find that we had that tension level. We found that we could easily just kind of fly around, and since you could only really score a maximum of up to 2 tiles at the end of each round for whoever who controlled tri-prime, there's lots of parts of the board that you're just kind of drifting around and you really weren't doing much. And if you wanted to go create some conflict and get at the other person, they could see you coming a mile away. So you start doing some, tug of wars over tri-prime, and I just found that it was lacking. And so that was a 2-player experience for me. So moving on to the 3 and the 4-player experience, that's where I found that the game started getting a lot better, and I actually started enjoying it. And the reason being is because when you set up this board, there are a lot of choke points throughout the board that exist. For example, if you're to fly one of your spaceships into like an empty space, and it's just an empty galactic space, there's no planetary system there, well, nobody can fly through you, nobody can exterminate you, you are just there. And the cool thing about that is, depending on how the board has gotten set up, is that you can create choke points and force people into different areas, or you can start funneling people the way that you want them to. And that really starts to shine with 3 or 4 players, because then there's that interaction, there's that player interaction that goes on, where instead of getting people to focus on you, I find a lot of this game is trying to get your opponents to focus on each other. Then you can kind of take care of what you want to take care of. And I like that. It starts to shine that way, and then you start getting that feeling that in fact you're playing a 4X game. And so for me, that's why I want to talk a little bit about the player count, because at 2 players, honestly, I will not play this game with 2 players. 4 players, yeah, sure. Yeah, it's enjoyable. It might start getting on the chaotic side for a few players, because then what happens is everybody's just smashed in amongst each other. It's very difficult to move before bumping into somebody else. So for me, it seems like the sweet spot for this game would be around 3, where you have some freedom to move around and be able to feel like you're starting to build a civilization, or to kind of get that 4X feeling of a game without always just stepping on top of each other's toes and kind of fumbling around and kind of being forced to interact with people, not because you want to, just because they're there. And it's kind of like Small World, I guess, in that sense. So anyhow, those are my comments about player count. The other thing that I actually think is pretty neat about this game, especially myself, I have 3 tiny tabletoppers, well 2 and 1 in training. And I always like games that can take a big type of game, like a big version of a game or a big genre of a game, and just melt it down to its core mechanics, so that when you're playing this game with your children, that you might be able to teach them very simply kind of what that means, and it might be a stepping stone to them for the next game. And since this is designed as being a micro game, a 4X micro game, this is a perfect game or learning opportunity for you to have with your children, so that they might be able to learn what 4X means and kind of what the feeling of it might be, and what other games might actually be like this but at a higher scale. Like, for example, one game that I think of, like for example for card drafting, my tiny tabletoppers right now love Sushi Go, and that is card drafting just at its purest. But the cool thing about that, by getting them to play a very simple game, and they love playing it, it plays very fast, and again it fits in the same time frame, say, as this game here, then maybe in a couple years I might be able to introduce them to more card drafting games and get them playing 7 Wonders and start, you're building that, you're building these blocks. So if you have tiny tabletoppers out there that you'd like to play Eclipse with one day, or Clash of Cultures, or think of any other 4X game that you want, this might be a good opportunity for you to actually be able to start teaching your kids, well, you need to explore, you need to go out and see other worlds, and then you need to expand, you need a presence, or otherwise you're just going to get squashed. But sometimes it just comes down to, we need to fight, we're going to exterminate, we need to take care of each other, we're going to have conflict, because you can't just grow out before you start hitting other people. And then at the end of it all, you can't do this if you can't sustain everything. And so there's going to be this exploit opportunity where you got to use the resources available to you and actually exploit and keep your units on the board. So there's that neat kind of learning curve, so that might be a decision point for you as well. Now, the other thing I have to say is, me personally, I am not a space fan. I don't buy a game just because it has a space theme. There's basically only a couple space theme games that I really enjoy. Galaxy Trucker, because it's just that's just a lot of fun. And so for me, even when I see a game like this, personally, I wish it was a different theme. And that's just a completely, you know, I'm more into the medieval traders in the Mediterranean. That seems to be, you know, pushing cubes, you know, a brown cube, white cube, and a red cube. So maybe that's you know, something for you to consider. If you're not a space theme guy, like I had a hard time jumping into this theme. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm flying my spaceship around, and it's kind of neat, but I'm just not. There wasn't anything that was grabbing me and you know, compelling me that this had to be a space theme. So if you're not a big space theme kind of person like myself, well then maybe this might not be the most compelling game for you. But if you are in a space theme and you do like the idea of having a 4X game just distilled to its very basic mechanics, well then great. Now let me talk about my most favorite thing of this game, and something that might work for you as well, is I love the mechanic here of pre-programming your cards and not knowing what each other is doing. I mentioned it in the video as well. One game that I really enjoy playing is River Dragons, and again, that's another game where you get to pre-program all your movements, and if you get even one of them wrong, the rest of your turn is kind of a waste. You're like splashing the water, and then you got to go back and start again, and then now things aren't where you thought they were going to be, or people were doing different things, and so then there's a whole lot of chaos that ensues, and it's kind of funny. Like it's lots of fun to do that, and it's the difference between River Dragons and here the efficiency of what your action is going to be is depending on whether people choose that exact same action. They don't have to be in your way, but whether or not they choose that same action. And that's neat because that takes the game from here to here, and then it forces you to kind of stop and analyze what other people might be doing, and then that also brings out that metagame. Then that's when you start doing a little bit of trash talking and trying to encourage them to actually do something in your favor, and then maybe kind of massage your cards at the beginning of the round, or order them in such a way that maybe it'll be the most beneficial for you. And that, again, that is a better experience to find with more players, because there's more directions and more strategies and more opportunities to kind of suggest things to other people or to your opponents to hopefully push them away from you and allow you to find a little nook in the universe that you might be able to grow from. So I like those style of games, and I like that element that comes up off the table here. To me, this is my most favorite part of the game, is actually this pre-programming. That being said, is sometimes you're like, you know, like you can get really frustrated. If you get frustrated by the fact that things don't work out exactly as you'd planned because maybe they weren't as efficient, or people moved in a different way that you thought, well, this again might not be the game for you. But if you're into games like River Dragons, you know, name escapes me now, there's another robot game like where you do the same thing, you pre-program your robots how they're going to move, then you might like that component of the game. And for me, that's a favorite mechanic for me that this game provides. So I hope that has provided you with enough decision points, both with how the game plays and the different feelings I have about the game, so that you may make an informed decision. So if you like this video, please come find me on YouTube or Facebook, Connect More Board Games. I love to see you there. I love doing these videos, and I hope to see you for future ones. And again, let me please stress, if anything about this game has tickled your fancy, please go to the Kickstarter page and check it out in more detail for yourself, so you can make an even more informed decision, and even see other video reviewers who have done a review on this as well. I know Rado, again, I've mentioned him several times. He's done one as well. Go check out other opinions as well and see what resonates with you. Thank you very much. I hope you have a great day and happy gaming. Cheers.